Welcome to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of all the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we're going to be talking all about kids' TV, shows that maybe we've already showed our kids or that we're planning on showing our kids, stuff that we remember watching from when we were kids. And I'm going to bring up a really weird and creepy phenomenon that has been sweeping YouTube for the past year that you really need to be aware of. If you are in the habit of showing your kids videos on YouTube or even handing them the phone and walking away, hey, no judgment. Parents get desperate, but you got to be careful, and I'm going to tell you why. But before we get into all that, Brandon, how are things going with Noah this week?
Hey, everybody. Things are going pretty well for us. We're getting into the full holiday swing, so I don't know about you guys, but we've got the tree. We've got it up. We've got it decorated. We like to get started early.
Good for you guys.
As soon as Thanksgiving is over, we go right into it. As soon as possible, get that tree. My son Noah has been having a great time. He really loves the Christmas lights. They go onto the tree. Specifically loves to eat them. So we try not to be terrified that he's going to break them and electrocute himself or explode or anything like that.
Yeah.
It makes for really adorable photos when he eats a light and it goes in and his whole face lights up basically. So it's going to make for some really good Christmas card material. But we've just been having a lot of fun doing a little bit of the holiday spirit around our house. What's your guys' situation been?
So we are foregoing the Christmas tree this year. I know. Don't tell Santa or baby Jesus. Because we don't spend Christmas at our house. We spend it with our in-laws and with my parents and my grandparents and all that. So it just seemed like an exercise in futility for us to drag the tree out of the attic, put it together, and it's a fake tree anyway, and stick the lights on and all that, especially because David is getting to the point where he's crawling now, and he's kind of learning to walk with assistance, and I just didn't want one more thing for him to potentially grab onto and yank down on top of him or something like that.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, we should definitely have a separate episode later on in December. We can talk all about the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. So aside from that, David caught a double ear infection last week.
Ooh.
And that was kind of rough. So I took him to Children's Healthcare in the city where we live last weekend. Not because it was so severe, but just because we just didn't want to wait for the pediatrician to open up Monday morning. Because, by then, if not treated, it could, of course, gotten worse. And, infections, they're bound to happen when your kid's in daycare. My kid's been in daycare for a few months now. But you just have to do whatever you can to treat it as soon as it crops up. So he's a lot better. They gave him a prescription of something called Augmentin, which I'd never heard of, but it's just name brand amoxicillin. Maybe it's kind of a stronger.
It'd be augmenting his strength. I mean,
exactly.
That's
I guess that's the point of it.
Yeah.
So he's doing great now. One side effect to the ear infection was that I think that's a lot of what was making him wake up in the middle of the night.
Absolutely.
And since we've been putting him on the Augmentin, it's twice a day, he's been sleeping a lot better. He'll still wake up, but he does a much better job of if I just go in there. We've started putting a sort of a soft blanket on top of him because he's finally at that age where he can we're not so worried about him smothering yet. Put the blanket on him. If it slipped off, kind of rub his back a little bit. Usually he'll go back to sleep pretty quickly, which is a blessing because that means I don't have to wake up all the way and then stay up for, half an hour or so, which was the case for a while there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we're thinking about David, hoping he gets past that pretty quick here.
Thank you. Hey, Brandon, if our listeners want to get in touch with us or follow us, where can they find us?
Yeah, you can find us on all major social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast, or you can get us an email at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and hey, if you haven't followed us on Facebook, go ahead and do that. We stream live our recording sessions most of the time whenever we can. So you can follow along, leave comments. We'll try and respond to you in line, and we tend to have a pretty good time. So let's dive in to today's topic. So last week, I mentioned to Brandon that I wanted to talk about kids' TV because David has gotten to that age where this is more a problem for my wife because she's home with him in the mornings. He is very active once he gets up. And we've got a big playpen for him to play with, lots of toys and stuff, but he'll get fussy if she doesn't constantly, have him next to her. And then, but for a lot of the morning, she's got to go into the kitchen to prepare his meals for the day, for daycare. She's nearby, but she can't be right there next to him, so he freaks out. So we've got his playpen set up in the foyer, which is, maybe 30 feet away from the living room TV. It's not so close that he's going to be sitting there in front of it burning his retinas.
Sure.
But she'll turn on Netflix, and what is so cool that I've discovered is Netflix for kids. So if you've got a Netflix account, you've most likely, I assume it's for everybody, you've got access to sort of kids Netflix.
Yeah.
It's a smaller selection. It's much more oriented towards kids. As far as I've seen, it's 99% like G-rated stuff, although I've noticed there's like movies. There's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which,
interesting.
I enjoyed it as an adult because I like the books, but I don't really see kids being that interested in it other than
1-year-olds. It's a pretty high concept.
Yeah, but but there's a lot of really cool kids cartoons. There's good movies. There's even movies from when we were kids, like The Little Rascals, which is a favorite of mine.
Nice.
But she'll turn on a nursery rhyme show called Little Baby Bum. Weird name, but it's just animated nursery rhymes. It's very safe, very soft. He'll stand there with his hands on the rails of the playpen, which is so cute. He'll watch it and then he'll sit down and play with some toys and he'll go back to that. But it keeps him from fussing so much so that his mom can prepare his stuff for the day uninterrupted.
Oh, nice pro tip there. Little Baby Bum.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, Little Baby Bum,
nice.
Oddly enough. So Noah is now, what is he, 10 months?
No,
9 months?
He's coming up on 9.
Coming up on 9
8.5.
months, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So have you guys
exactly.
had any interaction with the TV yet?
No TV interaction, at least not purposefully. So our living room is quite a bit smaller. We don't really have like a big kind of separated out area. We're kind of figuring out like once he starts crawling because he's not there yet, like do we kind of move him into like our foyer area, kind of like what you're talking about, give him more room to roam because the living room's a little small.
Yeah.
But normally what we'll do is we'll set him down in the living room with us, and then purposefully we will position him so that his back is to the TV. So just something for like other parents to consider. I think this has kind of worked out pretty well for us. Like if he's facing the TV, even if he's playing with other toys, he will start looking at the TV for sure because it's a bright shiny object and it's flashing all the time. And we're listening to the TV so he can hear it and it's distracting him. So if we turn him around, that tends to work. And he'll just kind of focus on his toys, or we can be down there playing with him and kind of keep him distracted. So for the most part, that's worked. But what's kind of been fascinating is just, you think about this before you have kids, and then when you initially have kids, like how quickly they adapt to screens and how quickly they want the screen. And I think it happened, my wife and I were just talking about this, maybe even like 6 weeks in, like pretty early, I feel like they started to notice the screens, like start to gravitate toward them, start to pay attention to them. Like we used to just have him kind of like on the couch with us, sitting with us, and we'd be watching TV, and we didn't think that he would pay attention because he can't see more than like a foot in front of his face when he's that young. But no, he would turn his head, because he can hear it. And then when he starts to get the better vision at a certain point, he'd start to kind of look at the screen. And that's when we had to start thinking about like, okay, what are we going to do here? And so for us so far, it's just been like obstructing his view if we can, or turning him deliberately away from it wherever we can. So that's kind of worked for us so far.
Nice. Yeah, that's I've noticed the same thing with David, and what's crazy with him is that it's not even the screen with him, it's the phone itself.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what it is he sees these phones in my hand and my wife's hand constantly, and he maybe just sees it as a toy.
Yes.
He treats my camera the same way because I'm a photo freak, and I take pictures of him 24/7 with my Sony camera.
Check out our social media if you want pictures of two babies.
Shameless plug. But he'll gravitate towards that, and I've gotten to the point where I have to kind of hide my phone behind me if I'm sitting with him in the pen, or just leave it in my pocket, so that he doesn't, because he likes to take it and then stick it in his mouth naturally. One time I was taking a video of him with my phone, and he grabbed it, which was really cute. And then I think I put it on selfie mode so he could take his own video, and then naturally it went right into his mouth.
Perfect.
And the phone like froze and shut off.
Oh my gosh.
So yeesh, maybe not so great of an idea.
Yeah, the phone for sure. I've noticed the same thing. Like if I'm watching or just using my phone and my son's sitting next to me, he'll just start like looking at me like, hey, what do you got over there? What's going on? When am I going to get my turn to play with this magical device? Or if the phone is laying next to me and he's playing with something else, he'll lunge for that as his next toy. So you kind of have to pull it away from him. So yeah, it's just crazy how quickly they get it. And I think you're probably right. That's what I've always wondered is like, oh, it's like a toy. Like it must be interesting because we use it all the time.
And all the time. And that's like...
Exactly.
so from what I understand, like there's a divide in the psychological community over whether or not smartphone addiction is a thing, but I think it's totally a thing.
Yeah.
Like I think you can get addicted to pulling out that phone and seeing those notifications come up, and then you just kind of scroll and scroll and scroll. Like I had to stop. I did disable notifications from Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that on my phone because I would open it up and I would say, oh, hey, my mom, commented on my photo, or my grandmother commented on my photo, and then I just pull it up and scroll, and now I'm like, fine, I'll just pull it out, and when I feel like it, I'll check it, and then I'll put it back. Of course, I'm not great at that.
We will get to your post eventually, Grandma Brooks. But no, we love you, though. Bye.
So one thing I did before we recorded this was I took a poll of my Facebook friends to see, like, are you showing TV to your kids yet? And if you are, what are they watching? Is it something that you can enjoy too? Is it totally driving you bonkers? And I have parents on my Facebook friends list with kids that are a variety of ages, some that are still like 5 months old, some that are 8 to 10 years old. So this is just a wide gamut of what is appropriate for what age group. But there were a lot of cool ones in there, and then a lot that I just didn't know about.
Yeah.
Of course, the first comment I got was about Baby Shark, which we all know about by now because it never leaves your brain. It just lives there. The minute you hear it, I think it's like that tape from The Ring. You have to show it to somebody else to break the curse. But even then, the girl's still going to climb out of the TV.
I'll be honest, I did not know about Baby Shark until you posted on our social media, check it out, Dadsplaining Podcast, about Baby Shark. And I just think that maybe my son's not old enough yet where I'm even like in tune with the baby universe of like things that are out there yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and out myself. I did not know about Baby Shark until like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. It gets stuck in my head, and I find myself singing it sometimes, which is infuriating. But hey, it is what it is. So I had another friend that posted that her niece and nephew love Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which gets on her nerves, but then she showed them Rugrats and they got into that.
That was amazing. I really want to know where we're finding Rugrats today. Is it on Netflix? Like, how am I getting it?
I don't think it is. I did a search. There's not a whole lot of Nickelodeon tunes on Netflix anymore, but it's possible that they're streaming.
Maybe they're on like the Nickelodeon
because there is actually a Nickelodeon Roku app. I don't know if you can get it on your phone or not, but on your TV, there's a, they're not called apps on Roku, they're called channels or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
But there is a Nick one. You have to pay for it, of course, then you get it, but hey, it's either that or you get a cable subscription, which I'm not so much a fan of because then you get all those millions of channels that you don't need. But Rugrats, that was a favorite of mine as a kid.
I love that. The theme song is classic.
Oh, yeah. Trivia, that's by one of the guys from Devo. Remember that band from the 80s? Mark Mothersbaugh. Anyway, I digress. Rugrats was definitely a favorite of mine, and I'm glad to see that kids can still relate to it today because it is kind of timeless. Another, I don't remember, I think this might have been my cousin, mentioned Daniel Tiger.
Yeah, Daniel Tiger's big, and so I was glad people are bringing this up. And even though we're not into the programming yet for our kid, if you don't know, this is kind of an offshoot of Mr. Rogers. So Mr. Rogers, the original,
it's a spinoff?
Sort of. Like, so the original Mr. Rogers TV show on PBS or your public broadcasting, whatever it is, he had a character called Daniel Tiger. It was an actual puppet that was the tiger puppet. That was the main character. And so obviously Mr. Rogers passed away, and then I don't know when, somewhat recently, PBS now came out with the Daniel Tiger show, and it's based on taking the background of like who Daniel Tiger and his family were from the original show, and kind of like now you zoom in on Daniel Tiger's life and where he's living and within. I'm not super sure on all the specifics, but it's related. Like it's in the same kind of like ecosystem where they pulled it out. But obviously Daniel Tiger, the show is an animated show now. It's about him. It's not done by Mr. Rogers because he's passed away, obviously, and it's not live. It's animated. But,
fascinating.
But what's really cool about that, and I'm glad we brought it up because I wanted to talk about Mr. Rogers in general, is that obviously that's kind of like the beginning of like educational television for children.
Oh, sure.
And Mr. Rogers' entire kind of MO was all about educating kids and teaching them what are frankly complex subjects through television was kind of his whole mission. And if you haven't seen the Mr. Rogers documentary, you should absolutely see it.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's fantastic. Will You Be My Neighbor? Go see the documentary. It's great. And it really just talks about his kind of whole philosophy behind it. And everything that I have heard so far has been that Daniel Tiger is in the same vein of teaching really good concepts to kids, If you have a situation where you're wondering, like, oh, this came up with my kid, like, how do I teach him about sharing, or how do I teach him about bullying? That show has an episode for that topic. So a lot of chatter on, like, parenting groups that, my wife is, like, a part of has been about, like, help, I need to explain something to my kids. And a lot of the times people are like, go watch this Daniel Tiger episode. It covers it perfectly.
That's interesting. Although I will say, I've heard this online and I've watched the show and confirmed it for myself, that if you look at the home that Daniel Tiger and his parents live in, they have tiger skin curtains. Like, what's going on there?
I've heard that as well. It's kind of awkward. It's like...
was that Grandpa and Grandma Tiger, maybe? And that's just
like
their
they
way
got
of
them
keeping
stuffed.
them around?
Yeah, exactly. It's a taxidermy of the family.
So anyway, we just don't talk about that. But that's really cool about it being a spinoff of Mr. Rogers. One thing, if you've never seen it, go on YouTube and search for, I think it's a Senate hearing that Fred Rogers attended when the government was deciding whether or not to continue funding basically like a public arts initiative, public television specifically. And he gave this really impassioned testimony about how important it is to his viewers, the kids, teaching them lessons, teaching them how to deal with their emotions like anger and sadness and things like that. And he moved the senator to tears that was on the committee. And I think the guy was already leaning towards continuing funding, but it just totally pushed him over the edge. And this was like in the, I want to say like the early 70s, the Nixon administration. There was kind of, a backlash against, we don't need to be spending money on this kind of stuff. But he kind of proved that this is really valuable. And that opened the door to, today we've got Sesame Street and Daniel Tiger and Mr. Rogers and all these different educational shows that are really safe, and that because they're on, public television, there's no commercials in between, for your kids to get dragged into. So they're not then going to run into the parents' room and say, hey, Mommy, Daddy, Big Bird just told me we got to buy some Nerf guns.
Well, yeah, the one dichotomy with that is what's interesting is that Mr. Rogers did not want to commercialize his shows. However, you can find a crap ton of Daniel Tiger product out there. So you can buy as much as you want to today, and
how things have
I'm
changed.
Sure that Mr. Rogers would probably not have wanted that if he was in charge of the Daniel Tiger show.
Yeah.
So
he would have reacted very
function
mildly.
of the times we live in. But that's it is what it is. But I mean, at a minimum, or at least what's good about it is that it's a good show.
Yeah, definitely. So I got a laundry list of other shows that parents are watching. Peppa Pig, reaction is divided about Peppa Pig. I know nothing about it other than it's about a pig who I have to assume is named Peppa.
Let's hope so.
Or maybe Peppa is
spicy pig. It's a peppery pig. Like
I don't know. But I have one cousin who loves it, one cousin who hates it. And then someone posted about Caillou, which I think is universally hated.
Universally hated. There was a really great joke on our social media about a PAC, if you're like a political action group, but it's now Parents Against Caillou, which I think is fantastic.
Parents Against Caillou.
So we all hate it. Thank you.
There's a lot of shows out there that are for kids but have like little references, like not adult jokes, not inappropriate stuff, but little references that parents are going to get, which I appreciate very much.
Yeah.
Sesame Street, our listener Karina mentioned that they will do great parodies, and I've seen these on YouTube. I didn't get any of them when I was a kid, but there's great stuff out there. Like they'll parody. There's one about Law and Order, SVU, not SVU because that's sexual crimes unit.
Yeah.
And
Let's hope
they wouldn't have gone in that direction. I hope. But there's that. There's one that is a parody of The Wizard of Oz, where Cookie Monster opens a door and he winds up in like the Twin Peaks universe, which I think is just absolutely amazing.
It's like double dipping,
right? Exactly. And then there's a show called Nature Cat that does the same thing. My Facebook friend Jarrell mentioned a show called PJ Masks, which I've never watched, but I think it's about like kids superheroes that wear pajamas or something like that.
I think I've seen that around. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, there's Curious George, Magic School Bus, the classics. So I've also, my cousin Kendall mentioned Looney Tunes, which was a favorite of mine when I was a kid. And of course, there's some episodes that you probably shouldn't show your kids these days, or at least should educate them ahead of time. Like, hey, there's like some weird racial stereotypes in this episode or something like that. Yeah. The 40s were a different time. But there's classics, there's the Barber of Seville, and Looney Tunes was great about using, like, one thing I loved is that the music that they used.
Oh yeah.
Big on classical music. Like if you know like William Tell Overture or something, as an adult, it's probably because you heard it in a Bugs Bunny cartoon as a kid.
Doing a massive operatic number.
Yeah, something like that, which is, just so wonderful. But she finds them on YouTube and shows them to her kid, on the phone. And that's one thing. I don't want to spend too much time on this today, but with YouTube, there's definitely sort of a cautionary tale that I want to make everyone aware of. This kind of came about, it's been happening over the past couple of years, but it really came to light last year with the hashtag ElsaGate.
Oh, wow.
And, of course, Elsa being the princess from Frozen. On YouTube, there is just a massive industry of these videos that are made to look like they're for kids. They're mixing and matching characters from different franchises. There's like Spider-Man and Elsa, and then there's Batman and the Joker and the Avengers and all this. And sometimes they're live action and they're adults dressed in costumes, and sometimes they're animated. But they'll take these kid-friendly topics, they'll mix them all together, and then they'll start adding in weird adult themes, like violence. Like there's an episode where Elsa is shooting at the Joker with a machine gun.
Goodness.
There are multiple cartoons where characters get pregnant somehow. There's weird violence, like arms and limbs being detached and things like that. And there's no real answer on who is behind this, who's making these, because it's this weird thriving industry. They take advantage of the YouTube algorithm and they rake in millions of views. And this has been covered on Wire, Fast Company, The Verge, BBC picked it up last year. It's really dangerous, and it even slips past the YouTube Kids app content filters. So the warning there is, don't hand your kid your phone and just walk off, like no matter how old they are, because YouTube is notorious for just auto-playing the next video, the same way Netflix does. But they'll take an algorithm and they'll say, because you liked this video, you'll probably like this other video. And it's just creepy. I've read comments where these things give kids nightmares because they'll take recognizable characters, like I mentioned Peppa Pig, and do very violent things to them, or just draw on like crude animation, weird, bizarre editing. It's almost like you're watching some sort of surreal horror movie. It's sometimes it's not even violent, it's just weirdly creepy, like something that you might see in a dream. And it's giving kids nightmares. And I don't know, like some people are even saying that there's sort of a pedophile aspect to it. So all of that to say, nothing beats being present with your kid. There is no substitute for being there as a parent and kind of experiencing things with them. You don't have to put your kid in a bubble and never show them a TV screen ever in their life until they turn 18, but be aware.
Yeah, or turn off the autoplay feature, which I think you can at least, like when you pick a video,
I think so.
It tells you like here's what's coming next, and you can toggle like don't play the next video. So try that out. But yeah, the general theme of like being safe, right? And with YouTube and Netflix, they're just going to keep on playing all day if you don't stop them.
Exactly. So now that I've gotten that kind of weird, scary topic out of the way, I wanted to pick up a couple of cartoons that I've discovered as an adult that I think are kind of cool for kids. So I turned on Netflix Kids, and I was just seeing what they have, original content. And there is this adorable show. I've only seen one episode, but it's called Motown Magic. It's about a little kid who lives in the fictional town of Motown. Of course, Motown Records being the old R&B Detroit label from the 60s and 50s and 70s. And he gets this like magical paintbrush, and he's able to get transported to this like magical world with all these cool characters and stuff. And there's a lot of this old 60s and 70s music mixed in. He's got kind of quirky grandparents. It reminds me of Hey Arnold in that way from when we were kids. He's kind of this like quiet, nerdy kid. So that's something that I'm sure a lot of shy kids can relate to. And it's done really well. A lot of great music, very educational and fun. And I'm finding that there seems to be a lot more of that going on right now, especially with Netflix Kids, where the production quality's gone up. It's not just cartoons, it's 3D animation now, which is really nice. Something else I discovered right after David was born, I've only seen a couple episodes. It was a show from 2014, I think on Cartoon Network, called Over the Garden Wall. It's not, I don't think it's for, 2 to 3 to 4 year olds. I think it's probably more for like your 8 to 10 year old kids.
Okay.
But it starred Elijah Wood.
Wow.
And the other, Colin Hanks, I think Tom Hanks' son, voiced the other character.
Oh, I had no idea.
And it's kind of quirky. It's got that Cartoon Network in the past 10 years or so has churned out some like really sort of bizarre, nonsensical shows like Flapjack and Chowder and Regular Show and things like that. That I enjoyed them. I haven't watched them in years, but they're definitely like your 10 to 12 year olds are going to get more out of it than your really young kids. But there's something kind of fun in there. And it's going to be different for everybody. But to me, you just can't beat the classics. I loved Animaniacs as a kid, Recess, Hey Arnold.
Absolutely.
I actually also remember a show called The Weekenders. It was a Disney Channel cartoon. I don't think it went on for that long. But it was cute. It had kind of a Doug vibe.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that I remember about it, which was really cool, was that the main character's parents were divorced. And that's something that I think I was maybe 10 years old when I saw it.
Yeah.
I had never seen a show where they talked about divorce at all. But of course, it's something that a lot of kids go through, from a very young age. I think Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street have also dealt with that in recent years, which is really nice. And then along similar lines, there was a Nickelodeon cartoon that I liked as a kid called Pelswick. I don't know if you remember this. It was a very funny show. The main character, his name was Pelswick, and he was wheelchair bound.
Oh.
And I remember that, and I remember, oh, cool, here's a main character of a cartoon who lives in a wheelchair. And I think, somehow he had this imaginary friend, or maybe it was God or something like that, like this old man with a white beard that was kind of funky and funny and played saxophone or something like that. But that was fun, and I don't know. I miss Nickelodeon growing up and watching that as a kid. I think that's what gave me such a weird sense of humor, was growing up watching Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life and Invader Zim and all that stuff. I don't know how much of that was appropriate for me to watch as a kid. I think Nickelodeon
was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting
at the time. It's a little bit different than today's interesting. Where it's just obviously designed just to be goofy and weird and crazy, which, you could probably argue some of that stuff was too.
Yeah.
But I really liked the classics, which were classics before I was watching them, like the Flintstones,
oh yeah,
the Jetsons,
Hanna-Barbera era.
Anything of the Hanna-Barbera variety.
Yeah.
Was watching all
Tom
of
and Jerry.
that. Tom and Jerry, obviously we hit on Looney Tunes, of course. So I loved a lot of the older material as well, even when I was a kid. And then, the new stuff that we kind of hit on, the Rugrats, the Dougs, the Hey Arnolds. I watched, maybe when I was a little bit older, a fair bit of Rocket Power, kids
Rocket
doing
Power, yeah.
extreme sports and have abnormally large heads for some reason.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great classics, which I think are probably things that I've looked forward to re-showing. I haven't really thought about Rugrats as much. I think it's cool that it's still out there, but I've definitely thought about I can't wait to show my kid Looney Tunes and the Flintstones and the Jetsons. Got to whip out my Cartoon Network subscription again.
Well, Boomerang has an app.
Or Boomerang, there you go.
I think on mobile and for Roku and stuff like that, over the top.
Nice, yeah. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you could just stream old shows like that. There's a few that way, but Boomerang's one. And Boomerang also, if you follow them on Facebook, they'll do a Facebook Live, I think every Saturday morning. Oh. It's just a live stream of old cartoons.
Nice.
It's really, really cool. So nice. I keep an eye on that. And of course, before we go today, based on what's happened this past week, we got to talk about SpongeBob. I don't know if you saw the news. The creator of SpongeBob, Steven Hillenburg, passed away, I think age 57, 52. He was in his 50s, passing away from ALS. I was, I think, 9 or 10 when I started watching SpongeBob. Did you watch it all at all?
Absolutely. I watched a lot of SpongeBob, for sure.
Yeah, and it's something that, again, another one of those shows that contributed to my weirdo sense of humor. It ranged. Some of them were just kind of cheesy and goofy. Some of them were just outright bizarre and surreal. There were a lot of jokes that maybe went over my head until I went back and watched them as an adult.
For sure.
But it was definitely a favorite of mine.
Yeah, and if you can't immediately imagine the Krusty Krab pizza theme song, now that I've mentioned it, you're welcome. The rest of your day is now ruined.
Yeah, or the I think the first episode where all the anchovies come in and he's having to flip all the burgers and make the food.
Right,
and that
feeds everyone.
Of course, I'm not going to sing it.
The music, some of them, that was a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Or the classic Bubble Bowl episode. A lot of people have been sharing that, where Squidward conducts the orchestra.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's some touching moments there, for sure.
Yeah, and of course, Patrick Star, one of my favorite cartoon characters of all time. Just the dumb things he would say. Is mayonnaise an instrument? Anyway,
just wanted to percussion.
Yeah. I just wanted to leave that as my tribute to a guy that kind of brought me a lot of really fun memories as a kid and kind of turned me into kind of a bizarre, goofy, quirky kind of person as an adult. Hey, the world's a little less funny without you, Steve.
Yeah. But thank you. The world is funnier because you were here.
Yes. So I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of Dadsplaining. Hey, Brandon, if our listeners want to get in touch with us, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can reach us on all the major social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast. You can also drop us an email at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And we do want to give a quick shout out. Thank you to those who have reviewed. We do have an official rating and review now on iTunes of 5 stars. Thank you so much.
Yeah, baby.
But the job is not done. Please add more.
Definitely. Hey, Brandon, what are we going to be talking about next week?
So next week we thought it'd be kind of fun. We've done a number of episodes so far on a bunch of different topics, but one of the fun things about having kids and being a parent is that you kind of have to redo a lot of steps over and over again. For example, I am doing sleep training again with my child. So we're going to take a look at things we've done so far, what's worked, and how we're tackling it again for the second time.
Awesome. Okay, so until next time, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And hey, Brandon, what do you get when you cross a snowman with a vampire?
A vampire? No, I don't know.
Frostbite.
Oh, come on.
All right, thanks for listening.